Hello again, my Texas historians. We are going to pick up where we left off with the Mexican National Era. You should have your ISNs open to page 25 and page 26. You should have the information that we did in class. 25 should be a flow map of Mexican national events. Page 26 should be a tree map. That tree map does not yet have a title. That is part of your assignment for today. At the end of this lesson, you should have added information to your tree map about Green DeWitt, Martin de Leon, and the Power in Houston team. At the end of it, you should also create a title for your tree map, and that is what you should have when you come into class tomorrow. So we're going to continue picking up where we left off with Mexico forming its own nation, 1821, and the laws that follow. So we talked about this already. 1824, they had the Constitution, and that Constitution has three parts that you need to know. Coahuila y Tejas is one state. They have states' rights, and you have to be Catholic. That is the official religion of the country. Second, we have our colonization law of 1825, and that is because we need to populate the country. And so the state colonization law of 1825 has a few parts you need to know. If you want to come and get land grants, you should know what that word means, then you need to be a Mexican citizen. You need to or be willing to become a Mexican citizen. You need to have good moral values. You need to be Catholic. You need to speak Spanish. I also want you to add there's no slavery allowed in Mexico. That's going to be key later. So we move into the age of impresarios, and that is where your tree map comes into play on page 26. So you should already have some of those people. We're going to run through again our impresarios. So we start with Moses Austin. He was the first man to receive permission to bring our Americans or our Anglos to Texas. He has a land grant, but unfortunately he dies before he's allowed to get started. And that's where his son, Stephen F. Austin, comes in. He has a land grant, and he is the one who actually comes in and begins to settle families in Mexico, in this area, or what would future become Texas. And so he brings in what we called the old 300, because he brought over the 300 families to come and settle. Now we know it wasn't actually 300, it was 297, but the old 300 sounds better than the old 297. He also went on to bring more people, more contracts, more land grants, and bring over people. And one of the things that stands out about him is because he was so successful at it, he is actually known as the father of Texas. Now, Stephen F. Austin is not the only person. Inspired by Stephen F. Austin's success and supported by him is our next impresario, Green DeWitt. So Green DeWitt was supported by Austin. He tried a couple of times to get land grants and had been denied, but once he had Stephen F. Austin's support, he was allowed to get his land grants, and he actually brought over 400 families, Catholic families who were willing to become Mexican citizens, and they came over and established their colonies. Our next impresario is Martin de Leon. And one of the things that stands out about him is that he is the only actual Mexican impresario, Mexican born and raised. And as we know, our other impresarios have come from other places. Martin de Leon is the only one that has come from Mexico. And as you can imagine, his families that he settles are actually Mexican families. And that stands out because all of our other families have come from other places, mainly America, where our Anglos have come from. So Martin de Leon is establishing Mexican families, and he's the only Mexican impresario out of the bunch that we're talking about. Speaking of families coming from other places, this is where our next impresario team, Power and Hewitson, come into play. And they stand out because they brought their people from Ireland. James Power and James Hewitson were both actually Irish citizens, and they came over, immigrated to Mexico. And once they saw the opportunity here in Mexico for the cheap land, the good soil, they actually decided to go back to Ireland. And so as you read here, it says September 29th, 1826, James Hewitson, describing himself as a Mexican citizen by law and an inhabitant of Monclova, applied to the governor of Coahuila y Tejas, or Texas, that state, on behalf of himself and James Power, described as a foreigner and a native of Ireland, for permission to colonize the 10 littoral leagues of Texas between the Nueces River and the Lavaca Creek, and between the Trinity and the Sabine Rivers, and also the 20 border leagues adjoining the United States, and extending 40 leagues up to the Sabine River. So what stands out about Power and Hewitson are that they are Irish immigrants, and as you can imagine, they went back to Ireland, and they brought over and convinced and persuaded families to come from Ireland all the way to Texas to settle land. So if we are bringing Irish immigrants, we have Mexican settlers, we have Anglo settlers, then we can imagine the diversity that Texas is beginning to show as people are coming from all over to take advantage of these cheap land grants, of the good soil, and of the opportunity to start a new life. If you would like some more information, those aren't only impresarios, there are more, lots more, then you can find this link on Edmodo. Also, if you would like more information about impresario land grants in Texas, then you can find this posted up to Edmodo as well. All of these resources will be available in Edmodo in the Mexican National Era folder. So at this point, you should have added to your tree map on page 26 information about Green DeWitt, information about Martin de Leon, and information about the Power and Hewitson team. Please remember to give your tree map a title at the end. This is due in class tomorrow. If you have any questions, send me a message via Edmodo, Remind 101, or if you're in class, turn around and raise your hand.